Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and SDGs Society, where no one is left behind. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted by the United Nations in December 2006 and came into effect in Japan in January 2014. The purpose of the present convention is to ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity. Prior to this, however, a system to guarantee the rights and freedoms of persons with disabilities did not exist in Japan. This resulted in the rise of various disability rights movements. Today, it is important for everyone to unite to solve various social issues based on the SDG principle of aiming for a sustainable society where no one is left behind, regardless of disability. In this video, we will focus on the history of Japan's disability rights movement and transportation accessibility. Towards an inclusive society, physical accessibility and urban planning in Japan from the perspective of the disability rights movement. History of the disability rights movement in Japan. The history of Japan's disability rights movement dates to immediately after the end of World War II. Cities at the time were full of wounded soldiers and war orphans, which led to enactment of the Child Welfare Act in 1947, the Act on Welfare of Persons with Physical Disabilities in 1949, and the Act on Welfare of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities in 1960. The reality was, however, the so-called National Colony Network concept, which advocated the creation of numerous institutions for individuals with disabilities and confining them in those facilities. We spoke to Mr. Koji Onoue, who was a resident in an institution for children with physical disabilities.
A government policy began called the National Colony Network concept. It was a policy where they leveled mountains to create large institutions in each prefecture throughout the country, which were villages or colonies just for persons with disabilities. After it was started in 1965, numerous institutions for individuals with disabilities went on to be built. The problem was that there was absolutely no concept of persons with disabilities living together with able-bodied people. In other words, the problem was their complete indifference to the harmful effects of isolating individuals with disabilities from society. I was a resident of an institution for children with disabilities. I was a child at the time, but what I disliked was being given a number and being called by that number instead of my name. There was a place to sleep on the first floor and there was a class for children with disabilities on the second floor. We didn't set foot outside for 24 hours a day. There was a sense that they could do anything if it was in the name of treating a disability. I had 8 surgeries in the 2 years I was there. The more surgery I had, the less I could walk. I was operated on as a lab animal. In that institution, I was just operated on as a laboratory experiment. That was my experience. Many things happened in that institution that were different to what I had heard before I went there. An independent living IL movement was started in the 1970s by the persons with disabilities who doubted the role and nature of such institutions and left them to live in the community.
One of those was the Aoi Shiba no Kai, or Green Grass Association movement. It is a group whose members have cerebral palsy, founded in Tokyo in 1957. Movements gradually spread nationwide, where persons with disabilities went out in public and asserted their existence while interacting with able-bodied people. Goodbye CP is a documentary film that follows Mr. Hiroshi Yokota, who was a core member of the Kanagawa Green Grass Association. CP refers to cerebral palsy. This documentary film clearly records how young persons with cerebral palsy resolutely demonstrate their existence in modern society. When a group of young persons with cerebral palsy decides to abandon their wheelchairs and go out in public, this film follows their foray into the outside world. Mr. Kazuo Hara directed the film.
Persons with physical disabilities who had been cast out of the city and treated like foreign objects venture into the city using their own bodies as weapons. I shot the film based on that concept. Hiroshi Yokota, who has cerebral palsy, is in a train carriage alone without a wheelchair. For many able-bodied people in the train, that appears to be a strange sight. Those able-bodied people looking at this unusual sight should feel emotionally moved. I wanted to capture that emotion.
After the film was released, a newspaper article appeared saying that it was ridiculing persons with disabilities. Even at the Komaba campus at the University of Tokyo, where it was first screened, he was accused of being horrible to them. But it was persons with disabilities themselves who refuted that.
Mr. Yokota's first utterance was, "You are all wrong." On hearing this, some students at the venue initially thought that they had misheard what Mr. Yokota was saying. That was a truly dramatic scene. The theater fell silent. He said, "You may have looked at the film and thought Mr. Hara filmed me in the way he wanted, and perceived me as being portrayed just as Mr. Hara wished, but that's not true." This film was made with Mr. Hara and me fighting on equal terms. When you consider the theme of the film, Goodbye CP, you must turn your values as an able-bodied person upside down. This film contains that kind of agitation to change your values. I believe that, as this strong message has been conveyed widely, this film has become the Bible for the disability rights movement.
The Goodbye CP screening activity was spread around Japan by persons with disabilities. The people who made that happen were Mr. Kiyoharu Shiraishi and Mr. Hiroyoshi Hashimoto from Aieru no Kai, or Independent Living Organization.
I was shocked to see so many persons with cerebral palsy keep appearing in the film. I thought that I too should start a movement.
When the older guys boarded the train naked, I wondered how they could do that without embarrassment. I was a little surprised and thought it was radical.
Mr. Wakabayashi from the Tokyo Green Grass Association came to the screening. He said that green grass associations would be forming in the Kanto and Kansai regions and urged me to create groups in the Tohoku region, maybe in Fukushima, and join him in the movement.
Later, Mr. Shiraishi formed the Fukushima Prefecture Green Grass Association. He also served as a standing committee member of the National Green Grass Association. An incident occurred where a wheelchair passenger was denied access to a local bus in Kawasaki City, Kanagawa Prefecture.
We had a monthly steering committee meeting at the Kawasaki office of the National Green Grass Association. We held it every month.
In the beginning, they let us board the bus. That's why there was an increase in persons with disabilities wanting to catch buses without a carer. The situation became unmanageable, and that's when refusals began.
As more persons with disabilities started riding the bus company insisted they couldn't ride without a carer accompanying them. The Green Grass Association negotiated with the company to try and allow them to board the bus in their wheelchairs, but the company refused. The persons with disabilities were outraged by this response, and the situation escalated into the Kawasaki bus disputes.
I guess it was hard for them, but not allowing us to board was not right.
On that day, about 100 Green Grass Association members and supporters all boarded buses at the terminal in front of Kawasaki Station. There was a struggle as a loud voice boomed from a megaphone. Why can't we people with cerebral palsy ride on a bus? Aren't we all human beings? Some people blocked the front of the bus.
Isn't this inconveniencing others? Why are you doing this?
But the bus company's policy did not change.
Why won't you let wheelchairs board?
Open up!
I thought, why wouldn't they let us on? If persons with disabilities try to do something that is considered normal for able-bodied people, why do they immediately say that persons with disabilities shouldn't do it? I felt uncontrollable anger.
This was a major catalyst for those involved in the disability rights movement in Japan to confront issues of transportation accessibility. That wave continued to spread throughout Japan. However, it wasn't until 2000 that the law for promoting easy mobility and accessibility for the elderly and persons with disabilities was enacted, allowing wheelchair access to local buses. Now, let's look at Japan's disability rights movement from the perspective of transportation accessibility.
The enactment of ADA Americans with Disabilities Act in the U.S. in 1990, which was the first law in the world prohibiting discrimination against individuals with disabilities, had a big impact. We, at DPI, called on persons with disabilities to join a national movement for transportation access, and we expanded our activities year after year where people boarded trains and buses at the same time. In the 1990s, various laws and regulations finally started to be created, but right from the start, they were not enacted without resistance. At one stage, a phantom bill to install elevators in station buildings was started, but the Cabinet Legislation Bureau would not approve it, so it failed. Given that situation, we started a movement to have various local governments make regulations for transportation accessibility. In 1992, once ordinances were created in Osaka and Hyogo, the movement spread nationwide. Throughout the 1990s, we continued our national campaign to improve transportation access for persons with disabilities. Thanks to this movement, I think barriers were exposed. For those with disabilities, the barriers were present right from the 1970s, but with various campaigns, the existence of those barriers became visible to all of society. More people thought the barriers should be removed, so laws and ordinances were created, and the law for promoting easy mobility and accessibility for the elderly and persons with disabilities barrier-free law was enacted in 2000. The installation of train carriage facilities, train and subway station elevators, accessible toilets and tactile paving for persons with visual impairment all proceeded at once. The biggest progress was in major cities.
Successful examples resulting from the disability rights movement. Up until then, it was fine if the standards of the law for promoting easy mobility and accessibility for the elderly and persons with disabilities were observed. But as time passed, that quality had come into question. This made it important to have development and evaluation through participation by persons with disabilities, and the key was usability, regardless of whether the user had a disability or not. As successful examples, we feature accessible construction of the new national stadium for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics, and accessibility of the Shinkansen bullet trains. We spoke to Mr. Satoshi Sato, Secretary General DPI Japan.
The law for promoting easy mobility and accessibility for the elderly and persons with disabilities was enacted in 2000, and accessibility provisions started to be made for stations in urban areas, but they were inadequate. For example, whether it was a stadium or concert hall, even if they had wheelchair spaces, there were only a few, or they were at the far edge with poor visibility, and if the people in front stood up, their view was blocked. So, while persons with disabilities were able to participate, the only facilities were ones that could not be enjoyed. We wanted to address this situation somehow, so when the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics came up, we thought we could use that opportunity to once more raise accessibility standards. That led to involvement in the construction of the new national stadium. The initial proposal was made by Ms. Zaha Hadid. According to the IPC guide, wheelchair spaces should be 0.75% of all seats, and with 80,000 seats planned for the new national stadium, there should be 600 wheelchair spaces. But when we looked at the basic design, there were only 120 spaces, which was totally inadequate. We couldn't leave that situation as it was. Then, in 2015, Prime Minister Abe said that he would withdraw the proposal. I was so happy when I saw that on TV. I thought we could redo the design from scratch. We had already done a lot of lobbying, so the minister in charge of the Olympics said they would build a stadium with the world's highest level of universal design. The Tokyo 2020 accessibility guidelines had been written with participation by all stakeholders, and it was agreed to build the stadium in compliance with those guidelines. It had also been decided from the start that there would be universal design workshops with members from diverse stakeholder groups, and we too participated from the initial design stage. I think there were 14 groups in total, including persons with disabilities, senior citizens, and parenting groups. The design team showed us designs at every workshop, and we were able to express our wishes, exchange opinions, and have our opinions reflected in the design. I went to see the completed stadium, and I was so moved to see it. The whole ground was surrounded by wheelchair spaces. There were also wheelchair spaces on upper levels with secure sightlines, so that persons with disabilities could still see even if the people in front stood up. Everything we had requested had been included, and it was a truly magnificent stadium. We also had 500 wheelchair spaces created. The new national stadium has now become a template for various stadiums being built in the regions. Those involved are coming to inspect the national stadium, and its design is currently being reflected in stadiums nationwide.
Ms. Toshiko Kudo had participated in the Universal Design workshops, and we invited her to visit the new National Stadium once more.
I loved that I could come from the entrance to the spectator seats without any steps. The breadth of the field of vision is impressive, and I was very excited by the sense of immediacy.
Apart from wheelchair spaces, accessible gates were also installed at the entry gates. Restroom signs are also designed to be large and easy to read. There is also a toilet facility for assistance dogs. A calm down and cool down space has also been provided to calm and prevent panic attacks in persons with developmental and intellectual disabilities. The opinions of persons with disabilities were also sought when making the Shinkansen bullet trains accessible.
Shinkansen trains did have wheelchair spaces, but there were very few. The Tokaido Shinkansen line has 1323 seats, which was the largest number in the world for fast trains, but there were only 1 or 2 wheelchair spaces. Moreover, wheelchair spaces were so narrow that the wheelchair inevitably protruded into the aisle. That blocked passage by people with suitcases, so persons with disabilities in wheelchairs would have to go back out onto the deck. Then, if we use a wheelchair, we have to phone ahead to buy tickets, or it takes several hours to be served at a ticket office, which is very inconvenient. Ms. Eiko Kimura is a Diet member who uses a wheelchair. She told the Diet that persons with disabilities were unable to reserve a Shinkansen ticket for same-day travel. Mr. Kazuyoshi Akaba, who was the Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism at the time, said that he would remedy that immediately, and a study group was formed. The study group met at the end of December, and I was also invited. Ministers don't usually participate in study group meetings, but Minister Akaba did attend. Next to me were all the presidents of the 5 Japan Railway JR companies. Mr. Akaba turned to the presidents and said, "I am seeking a considerably higher level than what you are seeking." That was when I thought that they would really get serious about accessibility. For wheelchair spaces, we propose that the Shinkansen adopt the new national stadium standard of a minimum of 0.5% of all seats. Trains with over 1,000 seats would require 6 wheelchair spaces. We proposed a standard based on total seat numbers. So, for the Tokaido Shinkansen line that would mean 6 spaces, but their opinion was that then 6 were not needed and 4 would be enough. We had numerous discussions over this but could not reach agreement as we were on parallel tracks. In the end, the people at the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism convinced them and the new standards were created. I think the new standard is one of the best in the world, with 6 wheelchair spaces for a total of at least 1,000 seats, for spaces for 500 to 1,000 seats, and 3 spaces for 500 or fewer seats. Participating in Shinkansen accessibility led me to believe that opportunities can suddenly present themselves. Ms. Kimura's question to the Diet, the presence of Minister Akaba who was passionate about accessibility, this overlap of opportunities created a good outcome. We are truly grateful to the people at the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism who put themselves in the position of persons with disabilities, and to the railway operators for their efforts. New Shinkansen carriages meeting the standards are constantly being introduced, and trains with many wheelchair spaces are spreading throughout Japan.
We would also like to introduce some overseas examples of accessibility. The Dhaka Metro Line 6 in Bangladesh partially opened in December 2022. Japanese technology was incorporated under JICA leadership and with Official Development Assistance, or ODA. There are accessible features inside the station precinct including tactile tiles, automatic gates with wheelchair access, and elevators directly connected to platforms. Apparently, such accessibility is rare in Bangladesh. Until now, it has been difficult for persons with disabilities to participate in social activities. But with the introduction of an accessible Dhaka Metro, we anticipate that this will promote social participation by individuals with disabilities in Bangladesh. Conclusion: the importance of participation by persons with disabilities from the planning stage in international cooperation. The history of the disability rights movement in Japan was by no means a smooth one. However, persons with disabilities themselves went out in public and asserted their own existence, seeking a society where everyone could coexist. Nowadays, diverse organizations are mainstreaming disability. This means incorporating disability perspectives as central elements in various policies and projects. In promoting participation by persons with disabilities in international cooperation, it is important to promote disability mainstreaming to realize an inclusive society where no one is left behind.